In the suffocating atmosphere enveloping Fairmont Crest, where every eye still lingered on the mysterious disappearance of Chelsea, another earthquake was quietly forming as whispers of a sudden wedding began to leak across town. Although no official confirmation had come from anyone in the Dupree family, rumors of a shocking marriage spread swiftly from the town center to the waiting hall of the casino, where Martin had once confronted Joey. Against this backdrop, Vanessa appeared like a cold wind blowing through a land already frozen by division and loss. She entered the Dupree mansion not to draw attention, but to plant a piece of information that could shatter the fragile structure of the family. What she carried was not only news that Leslie was negotiating to buy the mansion across the street, once owned by someone with suspicious ties to Joey, but also evidence that Chelsea had secretly texted an unidentified person just hours before vanishing. That final message, Vanessa said, was never sent but was saved on a device she stumbled upon while accompanying Joey to a private auction in Charleston. The device had been hidden in an antique jewelry box, and when she opened it, she could hardly believe her eyes. A photograph of Chelsea with Allison, both smiling, though Chelsea's eyes betrayed visible discomfort. That discovery left Vanessa unable to remain silent, compelling her to return to Fairmont Crest despite having left with Joey in bitter conflict at the same time. Jacob was following a lead he received from an anonymous woman who called the hotline he and Kat had set up for information about Chelsea. The woman's voice trembled, but it was clear enough to guide Jacob to an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. Unable to go alone, he reached out to Kat, the only person he still trusted while everything spiraled out of control. Kat agreed without hesitation, carrying the weight of guilt since she feared she might have unwittingly led Joey closer to Chelsea. They drove in silence, no words exchanged, yet both understood that any mistake now could push Chelsea, if she was still alive, into an abyss without escape. At the warehouse, Jacob found mud traces leading to a side door padlocked with chains that showed signs of having been recently opened and locked again. They decided to return later with more backup, but the sight before them, a strand of long hair snagged on the chain, a ripped white fabric stained with dried blood, was proof enough that this was no longer an ordinary search. Kat nearly collapsed when she realized the blood appeared to match Chelsea's DNA sample she had once archived for forensic purposes. Elsewhere, in a remote cabin hidden deep in the forest and absent from official maps, Chelsea remained Allison's captive. Exhausted by the passage of time, she clung to anger to stay awake. In Allison's delusion of a meant-to-be bond, she forced Chelsea into a wedding dress, applied makeup, and staged a mock ceremony, reading vows while Chelsea's hands were tied and her mouth gagged. In Allison's twisted mind, this was not violence but a sacred connection misunderstood by the world. Convinced that marrying Chelsea would bind her love, Allison's obsession grew so intense that she began filming every moment, preparing a wedding video to send to the Dupree family as both a warning and a warped psychological game. What Allison failed to realize was that the cabin once belonged to someone who had worked for Joey, and her careless use of the satellite phone there had leaked a signal. One cat was now quietly tracing through data. Meanwhile, a true shockwave erupted at Fairmont Crest when Vanessa announced that a couple had legally married in town. Not in secrecy, but in a ceremony officiated by a licensed local minister. No one could have predicted it was Derek and Ashley. After days of silence, Ashley had visited Derek upon hearing he could no longer walk after his accident. Initially there to comfort him, she found Derek, overwhelmed by despair and fear of abandonment, proposing from his hospital bed, with no ring, no flowers, only a tearful plea. Ashley, torn between pity, regret, and haunting memories of leaving someone when they were weak, said yes. Her decision was not born of fiery love but of deep guilt and the belief that she was responsible for healing Derek's wounds. Yet, the moment they signed the marriage certificate, Ashley realized she had crossed a door she could never reopen. No family attended, no friends bore witness, only a distant nurse unaware of the storm unfolding. When Vanessa learned of this, she wavered between skepticism and sorrow, wondering if Ashley understood she had just accepted a life no longer under her control. When the news reached Andre, who had been quietly watching since Chelsea's disappearance, his usual calm began to crumble. He had been the one to witness Ashley's tears when she left Derek, and the one who felt most deeply the love she carried for him, love torn between duty and longing. Andre said nothing, but his eyes revealed a storm building inside, one that could consume every fragile relationship if left unchecked. Meanwhile, Leslie, upon hearing that Derek married Ashley, smiled coldly. To her, it was a perfect move. Ashley now bound, Ted left with no choice but to stand by her, and Chelsea, if alive, stripped of her place in the family she once anchored. But what Leslie had not foreseen was Vanessa beginning to suspect her true motives and quietly gathering evidence of a large sum transferred to an anonymous account at the same time Chelsea vanished. Back at the warehouse, Jacob and Kat received the first weak ping from the wireless GPS tracker Naomi had provided. It was faint, but enough to reveal that the cabin where Chelsea was held lay just over 10 mountain miles away. Unable to wait, they set out under cover of night with a topographic map and a drone piloted remotely by Smitty. As they advanced through the dark forest, an anonymous call was placed to the mayor's office, warning that if the Dupree family didn't cease their search, a farewell video would be broadcast online. No one knew who was behind it, but voice analysis revealed signs of professional audio filtering, suggesting Allison was not acting alone. She might have help from someone tied to the casino or worse, from within the Dupree family itself. What was unfolding made clear that Chelsea's disappearance was not the impulsive act of a madwoman but part of a larger, organized plan built on deception, threats, and psychological manipulation. Bigger questions arose. Which wedding was real, which was fake? Could love save those entangled in debts, grudges, and lies? And if Chelsea were found, would she still be herself, or just a shadow, shaped by forced love in a warped reality? The answers might not come in the next episode, but they would change everything forever. The storm of truth seemed to be approaching from all directions, pushing Fairmont Crest toward an inevitable breaking point as every secret unraveled at once, and impulsive choices left devastating consequences. Kat and Jacob pressed on through the freezing night, weaving through roots and fog toward the hidden cabin, their silence heavy with dread. Kat's eyes betrayed torment, as though asking herself whether her haste in those early days had led Chelsea into Allison's trap. She once believed partnering with Joey was the fastest route to Allison, but now it seemed everything had been staged to ensnare her. Inside the cabin, Chelsea was losing her grip on time, her mind flickering between reality and hallucination as Allison repeated hollow promises of love, family, and imagined futures. Each time Chelsea resisted, Allison tightened control, not through violence, but through twisted games. Feeding, then starving, comforting, then threatening, indulging, then punishing with prolonged silence. Chelsea fought to stay conscious, memorizing every detail of the room to leave clues if she ever escaped. But fatigue wore her down until she barely recognized herself. Back in town, Vanessa began receiving anonymous threats warning her to stop investigating Allison. She told no one, but recorded and stored all data on a separate drive in a bank vault. She knew that if Chelsea wasn't found soon, sympathy would turn into suspicion, and anyone tied to Joey could be branded an accomplice, including her. That was why she risked returning to the mansion, sharing everything with Nicole, the grieving mother, hoping the old USB holding Allison's voice message to Joey would push police to expand the case. But Nicole, hardened by weeks of pain, lashed out, forcing Vanessa to leave the mansion that very night. No one noticed that a newly hired gardener secretly photographed their exchange and sent it to someone far away, who had been watching their every move through satellite phone updates. Meanwhile, Ashley awoke in her new apartment with Derek, still wearing the simple silver wedding band she had accepted to soothe his despair. Derek, though paralyzed below the waist, had begun exerting control over every detail of her life. What she ate, who she avoided, even forbidding her to leave without him. Ashley at first dismissed it as insecurity, but she soon felt caged in a gilded prison of marriage. Worse, deep in her heart she knew her love was not for the man in that bed. Andre, the one who understood her childhood pain, who could calm her with a single glance, was the man she truly longed for. But Andre had vanished from her orbit, seemingly ready to let her go forever. At the mountain observation post, where Jacob coordinated with Naomi and a volunteer forensic team, Chelsea's old charity event wrist tracker suddenly blinked on the system. The coordinates matched the mountain where Kat and Jacob were heading, but the signal lasted less than a minute before vanishing. Naomi suspected Chelsea's captor was either moving or laying a trap. She rushed to alert Jacob, but radio interference from the cliffs garbled the signal. Unable to wait, Jacob deployed the drone, spotting fresh tire tracks from an old pickup that had left within the past hour. When he and Kat arrived, the cabin was deserted, but on the floor lay a smear of blood and a torn wedding dress. Kat broke down, nearly screaming, while Jacob stood frozen in helpless silence. At the same time, Allison's horrific wedding video, showing Chelsea bound and forced into a white dress, was uploaded anonymously to a live streaming platform. Though only 18 seconds long, it was enough to shake the entire town. Authorities locked down the mountain, and Naomi announced the case had escalated to federal level. This meant anyone aiding Allison would face maximum prosecution. Joey, upon hearing, rushed back from Charleston, not out of concern for Chelsea, but fearing what investigators might uncover about his own knowledge. Martin, who once believed the disappearance to be the work of a lone madwoman, now had to admit an underground network was behind it all. He traced financial transactions at the casino and uncovered an anonymous account receiving funds from shell companies tied to one familiar name. Leslie's night fell again over Fairmont Crest. Suspicion tainted every glance. Love was no longer sanctuary but a double-edged sword. As with Ashley and Derek, Andre and Ashley, Allison and Chelsea. Each bond now carried the risk of becoming a weapon, as truth itself ceased to be sacred. In a fleeting moment, as Kat clutched the blood-stained wedding fabric against a stone wall, she wept not only for Chelsea but for herself, for trusting too blindly, for placing her family's lives on the table, and for fearing she no longer had the strength to save anyone. Only fragments too broken to ever be whole again.